Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. It's Marlene with Stories of the Supernatural. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. Everything is good over here. I know I've gotten some emails about, since people that are aware that I live in Florida. I live now in North Florida, and luckily we braced for it, but I had purposely moved to what I did in the middle of the state, as in far away from the coast, because I grew up in Miami and I know what it's like to face hurricanes my whole life. And we made a decision. Yeah, it's beautiful to live on the coast, but when it comes to moments like this, you realize, you know what? I don't want that worry. So we got lucky. This thing skirted in, as everybody knows, it came in south of Tampa through Lee County. It skirted across the state south of us, and all we got was some rain, some wind bands, and of course, right now as I speak, it's exited and it's up on the east coast of Florida, making its way towards it's again become a Category 1 hurricane, and it's going up into, looks like, the Georgia Carolina coastline, Savannah, Charleston. Let's see what happens with that, and that's an ongoing thing. But let's get on. But before I forget, guys, don't forget to subscribe to my Substack newsletter. It comes out a couple of 2 to 3 times a week, and on there I put all the important stuff. It I am gonna have a giveaway for my new book that just came out, The Phantoms of the Follies. Probably I'm gonna have the giveaway through Goodreads, but it's available for pre-order, but it will not be available until October 4th. Okay, about a week from today. And I'm gonna, and usually in the newsletters is where I put out there if I have giveaways. If I uh, am going to do anything special. It's That's the place to do it. So, and also visit me on erie.news, not erienews.com, erie.news, and I've got a lot of interesting. I read all the stories of weird, unusual stuff, things like that. Not sometimes paranormal, sometimes have to do with true crime. I look at stuff from outer space, cloning, you name it. If it's weird, I'll read a little blurb on it, about half an hour, like, for people that enjoy the news. Just the weird one, those. But anyway, let's get on to the good part. The good part is who's the guest today. This gentleman has been here several times, and I'm so happy to have him back. His name is Reverend Bill Bean. He is a world renowned exorcist, spiritual deliverance minister, and he is known as a spiritual warrior. Bill has helped hundreds of people in America, along with hundreds of others in 50 other countries. His Bill Bean Spiritual Warfare Deliverance Ministry addresses anything from curses, blocks, attachments, obsession, oppression to possession by demonic spirits. He's also an internationally known author, lecturer, and paranormal supernatural expert. Bill Bean is currently appearing in episodes of A Haunting Ghost Nation, Fright Club, along with a 2019 episode of The Holzer Files. Bill regularly joins George Noory on Coast to Coast AM and hosts his own weekly show called Warrior Mode. Bill Bean appeared in the Lifetime Movie Network series I Was Possessed and was in the 2010 sci-fi movie The Haunted Boy. He has also appeared in many other TV shows about the paranormal and the supernatural as well. His deliverance ministry addresses, like I said, anything from curses and possessions, and we're going to talk about it. He has a new book that's coming out, and he's given over 2,000 media interviews in his career, and he's performed hundreds of exorcisms all over the world. He's the author of the following critically acclaimed books: Dark Force, Delivered, 10 Steps to Victory, The Connection, Stranger Than Fiction, Dark Force Revisited, the seventh book, Stranger Than Fiction 2, and Purge. Um, he was also featured in a 2019 book from Dr. Heather Lynn called Evil Archaeology, Demons, Possession, and Sinister Relics. And again, we're going to talk about a new book. I believe, I don't know if it's been released or it's about to be released, titled Tales from an Exorcist. Help me welcome him. How are you doing today, Bill?
Thank you so much for having me back, Marlene. And I want to apologize about the previous times that we couldn't
No,
connect. And it was, I've just been so busy with so many people, so many cases that it's
right.
like trying to put a farm.
Yes, we were talking previously before we started to record that a lot of the stressors, I want to say, in the last 2 years, more or less 2.5 years,
Yeah,
definitely it's like putting gasoline on the fire, I imagine.
yeah, yeah. It's just amazing. And also, I'd like to say that I'm certainly praying for you and your family and everybody in Florida that has been affected by
Yeah,
Hurricane Ian, and also praying for the people that are in the path of it as it has become a Category 1 again.
yeah,
And we certainly pray for the people that might be in line for that thing to come through there.
right. And I have to say that because I've been, like I said, when you grow up in this, like I said, I was born and raised in Miami, so I don't want to say it's a threat, but it's always there. When you live in a certain place, whatever
Sure.
the case, you grow up with it. And I want to say this governor, he's been great. He's been on the money because I've seen there's a main roadway, even though I live in a very small town, there's a big roadway used by truckers. I've seen dozens of those electrical, well, from different companies, like electric
Yeah.
companies from out
Oh,
of
yeah.
state,
Sure.
dozens of them heading southbound. They really, it looks like they've really brought in ahead of time in order to get the electricity restored. God, because let me tell you, that makes a
Yeah.
big difference. We've all wimps, and I might admit I'm one of them. You take away the electricity, and that's only great if you're camping, but when you're living at home,
Yeah.
it's like, oh,
It's reality slaps you in the face. Then we take a lot
absolutely.
of things for granted in life, and when we suddenly don't have those things, boy, oh
Yeah,
boy,
it's by choice when you
that
want to
really
rough it.
disrupts a way of life. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You learn a lesson,
And
and that's one of my 10 steps to victory: is to be grateful for everything. Don't fret about what you
yes,
don't have. Be thankful for what you do have.
yes, absolutely. And it makes you end up being, I consider, my personal opinion, a happier person. Okay. And a lot of people sometimes mistake that, Bill, for thinking, oh, don't strive. And I say, no. You can be content as you go along towards a certain goal, with what you have, even if you want maybe something better in whatever area of your life. But
Yeah.
but let's face it, we live on a day to day, on a daily existence, is what I'm saying. What I
You're
think.
right. Life is very fragile and it could change super quickly.
Yes, of course. Or when you look back, because a lot of times people think, oh, when I get this car, when I get this job, or when I get this person, then I'll be happy. And it's like, what about all the days in between? What, you're always going to
Yeah,
be in a state of
that's right.
longing.
That's
Yeah.
right. And so it's really, as we talked off air, I mean, I think there's a concerted effort now by the devil and his minions and the human minions that take
Oh,
direct orders from the devil that carry out these agendas. Um, they are trying to lower the frequency and vibration of the people in America
yes.
and on planet Earth. And when you do
Yes.
that, it opens people wide open. They're wide
Hmm.
open for and vulnerable forward to demonic attack.
Yes.
And that's what's taking place here. And
Yes.
it's just very important that people find a way to have peace and not give in to the fear and the stress and the anxiety and panic, because again, we don't want to be in those negative areas because it lowers the frequency of vibration. So it
Sure.
is essential that we try to keep ourselves, our frequency of vibration, our being, our way of life on high frequency,
Yes.
high vibration. So
And
I say that over and over again, Marlene, and I And look, I can't force anybody to do anything, nor do I want to, but I could show people through personal experience, what God has done for me in my life and how He transformed my life. He took me from being a victim and saved me, and then transformed my life into being a victor and a warrior for Him. And it is by the power of God that I can do what I do. There's no other way. And some of the things that, I've just written this new book. It won't be out until October 22nd.
Okay.
But sitting down and writing that book, I had a chance to reflect on some things. And I'm telling you right now, as sure as I'm talking with you, some of those things that I had gone through, and some of the travel and having no sleep and doing it's supernatural in itself. It is supernatural how God worked through me to get to certain people on no sleep and having to switch planes like 2 times, taking 4 planes to get to where I had to go. And then, God working through me to help the people and to free them from evil. Just absolutely miraculous.
Well, you've seen the air travel. It's become crazy. How about the
Yeah.
cancellation of all these flights at the last
Oh,
minute? And I'm thinking, I hate to.
people acting up on the
Oh
flights.
yeah, that's another one. They, I
Yeah.
never see. Don't get me wrong. Every once in a while, you would hear about some crazy person that acted out, but this was very infrequent. Nowadays,
Yeah.
the other day I saw one where a guy just went up and hit one it was an attendant in the back of the head, like
Yeah.
would punched him,
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
like, I would be like, and this is the thing. It's like, and I don't know if you've seen it in your work, Bill, where, and if you want to say, well, there's demonic attachment or oppression or obsession, because it's the insanity. I mean, a lot of people look at it as
Yeah.
insanity. Okay, like in other words, their conduct is a product of mental illness, but I think there's a component there of spiritual interference as well.
You better believe it, because the mind, body, and spirit tie in together. They all tie into one. So where
Yep.
one area is affected, they can all be affected. And yes, I do believe that it is spiritual, to where, with some of these people who might already
Right.
have some type of mental instability,
Mm-hmm.
and you come up with this, that is why the cross lines things that some of the most hard thing.
Right, and that's what a lot of I'm not gonna, I understand. I understand very well what mental illness is, or behavior disorders. I understand completely, but people don't understand that you can have somebody with that disorder, but if they have some type of spiritual attachment, whatever, anything,
Yeah.
or influence, it will aggravate their symptoms, or maybe not
Yeah.
make them
On
take
the
their
fire.
medicine, or not cooperate. Let's say if they have caregivers or family, will make them like more combative. And it's like, yes,
Yeah.
you can have both things. And then, of course, sometimes when there is mental illness and they don't take their meds, or, or they keep going, let's say if they have because people don't understand, if you've been diagnosed with some of these mental illnesses or disease of the brain or chemical imbalance, you're supposed to be seeing a doctor on a regular basis to make sure that, hey, your dose is right, and just, things like that. And when they don't do that, that's when you see sometimes that they act out in ways that you're like, this is horrible. And I'm sure you've seen these stories out of, like, especially New York, people getting pushed in front of trains. I mean, horrible
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. I
Um,
have. I've been a part of some things that were life threatening, that could have been life threatening to me, and
uh-huh.
God kept me safe. And I'm
Okay.
thankful that I have the physical training to be able to subdue people and to keep them from hurting me. Um,
Wow.
but I have been in those situations, and it is just miraculous in itself, again, that God not only kept me safe, but helped me to keep the individual safe as well. And so I have lived through it. I have seen it firsthand, and it's just it's growing. It's increasing
And I don't know, Bill, you've
exponentially.
seen some of the pictures, some of these people that have done these really horrific things, and you see these pictures and you look at their face, and I've worked with people, who have severe mental illnesses, so they have this look on their face that's like, yes, obviously this person, but there's something else there, and I to
Yeah,
discern it is somebody that's worked in that area, and that you see there's some beyond the mental illness, there's something else that's driving it, And I know a lot
Yeah,
of people
there's
will
something else going on there.
yes, yes. And and if you really don't know what you're looking for, you could just make it just this is an organic problem. This is just strictly that this person is, for lack of a better word, is crazy. But sometimes the crazy is there but more. And it's being
Yeah,
the body or the mind is being used as an instrument. How's that?
absolutely. So when it becomes spiritual, that's exactly what the devil sends demons to do, is to literally try and unplug the mind of the victim and plug in
Yes.
that demonic force that now is sort of guiding the body to act up and do some things that a person wouldn't ordinarily do.
Well, and by the way, and I've said this before, and I'm saying I'm not giving it out to anybody, even serial killers, whether they have mental, because you can have a mental illness. By the way, that doesn't mean you're insane. In other words, you still know the difference
Right,
between right and wrong. But you will
right.
have, not all of them, some of them will say that when they commit these really horrific, they don't remember, like they black out. Like in other words, their personality and their consciousness sometimes is pushed back, and they come to
Yeah.
like after the fact, and
And that's what
that's a sign of
happens during
possession.
a demonic possession
Yeah.
is the person's mind is unplugged
Mm-hmm.
and that external force comes in and takes over. Now, in the case of some serial killers that I've studied about,
Mm-hmm.
they had in their younger years, they were exposed to evil. They
Oh yes.
were calling on evil. They were participating in cultic type of things.
Yes.
And there were also some uh, killing pets and
Yes.
animals and dissecting them and
Oh yeah.
beheading them and things of that nature. So they had the recipe and every ingredient there for the devil to work through an individual like that and create as much destruction through that person as possible.
Yeah. There's I mean, whether and I know some people don't like it, whether it's psychopath born. We've talked about it, Bill, sexual molestation and
Yeah.
physical abuse as a child, which is an entry point. It's all like a mishmash that basically it just for years. And of course, the child grows up, and then, especially if no adult was there to protect them, then, like you said, they become sociopathic. They start doing exactly what you described. They want to be the
Yeah.
victimizer instead of being the victim, and then they go into
Absolutely.
dark paths. Not everybody, by the way. I'm not saying there's a lot of people sometimes that endure very horrific things as children, and they get beyond it. They go beyond it, but there's some that don't. And like you said, when you look at their backgrounds and their childhoods, it's like, wow, some really dark
Yeah,
stuff
it's just
happened.
amazing. You look at that and you say, "Wow!" You could see how that began to form,
Yes.
and how the ingredients were there for that individual to go on to do high wickedness.
Let me ask you, in this book that you're about to release, I saw that you have several stories. Are these some of the encounters that you've had? Uh,
Yes,
okay. Okay.
and some are. I was very careful in trying to protect the identities of some of the clients, and
Okay.
I did everything that I could by changing dates and locations, and certainly either not mentioning names or changing names.
Mm-hmm.
But in other instances, one, two, three or four, they agreed
Okay.
and wanted their stories told, and I mentioned them in there. And
Okay.
it's very powerful. And I'll tell you, Marlene, this is the 10th book that I've written.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the 10, this will probably be the most compelling as far as people digging into this and seeing the dynamics that took place, reading about what was going on in the person's life or the family's life leading up to that full manifestation of evil that nearly destroyed some of these people and families.
Oh, sure. Let me ask something, Bill. When you get contacted by a family or person, do you do you feel before you get there, am I dealing with something demonic, or is it when you actually meet the person? Because I imagine they contact you first. At what point Or do you start getting how can I say it? It's like a feeling. I don't know. Do you get something beforehand before you even meet the person like, yeah, there is something here malevolent involved with this
Yeah.
person? Okay.
Yeah. So when the person contacts me, I know right away. I don't claim to be anything,
Mhm.
Marlene, but what I can say is that God gives me a knowing of things. That's the best way
Okay.
to say it.
Sure.
And yes, so I do know, and God will sometimes show me things and show me exactly what's going on.
Okay.
And so then we just take it from there. And also, like the other night, this was just so amazing. I do sessions, and again, God's worked through me to help people from all over the world. And I was answering. I usually go on late at night and answer my messages because I'm so busy. That's the only time. I still don't get to bed probably between 6 and 7 a.m. now, and
Okay.
that is every morning.
Wow.
And so I go on very late, whether it's 4, 5, 5:30, whatever, and start answering some messages on like the social media. And this message came across 2 nights ago, 2 mornings ago, and this man was frantic, and he was in Tunisia, Northern Africa,
Okay.
and he saw me on a TV show over there and reached out because he was getting close to suicide. He was
Okay.
just, he had had enough. Nothing was going right in his life. Been suffering for a long time, being attacked by demonic forces, and
Mhm.
and that's what happens too. It's all part of a game to where they want to wear the person down to the point to where the
Yes.
person gives will to fight and to live, and that's how possession can take place or suicide.
Yes.
And so this individual contact, it was all perfect timing. I'm telling you. And so I saw the message, and I said to him, his name was Muhammad. I said, Muhammad, go send me a connection request on Skype right now. And he did, and within 10 minutes, we had the session right there because God was telling me that it was urgent, and
Okay.
I dropped everything that I was doing and had a spiritual deliverance session with him. And I'm happy to tell you that he's doing very well now. Praise God. And so that's another amazing thing that God does is he'll make that connection. And when a person is at
Right.
their lowest point, he'll somehow make a way for that person to be able to connect to me and then work through me to help them.
Right. Right. In other words, that. And did he have any idea how that had come about, Bill?
Yeah, he thinks it was through a family bloodline curse, and I
Mhm.
would be inclined to agree with him
Okay.
because he had a lot going on there and a lot of dynamics within the family as well.
Right. And you know that I know that you said North Africa, but down in Central Africa or the other, they have that
Oh yeah.
Muti magic, MUTI,
Yep.
which they do a lot of, especially in South Africa, the human sacrifice, and they seek out
Mhm.
especially individuals that are albinos because for them, that's like high magic. And
Yeah.
they even at one this was many years ago, I want to say 10 or years, they even had a special a unit. This was in South Africa on the police force because so many murders ended up being that was the motivator. It wasn't like
Ritualistic in
it was
nature. Yeah.
ritualistic children, and that's very
Oh.
prevalent over there. And they have found sometimes even in Europe children that they have flown them out from Africa to Europe for because the person who wants to do the ritual lives in another country, and basically they take the child from Africa, take them to, and there was one case, it was in England, and they, when they do the autopsy, that they could tell by what you have in the stomach content where you've been at,
Yeah.
and they found that this child wasn't, the child was from Africa. In other words, the child had been taken from Africa over to the UK specifically for this
Yeah.
purpose. And this happens, and people sometimes don't realize that some of that is more common than we think. All right,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
it's and unfortunately, uh, how can I say it? Because I want to say sometimes, Bill, that sometimes people, when you talk about possession and things like that, they're thinking of like the exorcist things. And people
Yeah.
that are possessed can do horrific things. I'm not talking about, hey, my head's spinning around or anything like that.
Right.
People that, like you said, that they engage in these dark rituals
Oh,
And
yeah.
how can I say? In other words, they're perfectly possessed. They've given themselves up willingly to
That's right.
this.
That's absolutely right. And that's part of an invocation
Yes.
invitation, and the
Yes.
devil will take them up on it and send those demons in to create a
Yes.
variety of, horrible
Right.
things.
Uses them to do things like
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
that's
And
right.
it's not like some type, like, get the only just the Hollywood version of when you think of the exorcism or the possession or things like that. There's a very dark, um, I want to say it, even though it's spiritually driven, they are out there actually doing the work of evil. How's that?
Yeah, no question about it.
They're like the
No question about it.
how would you call it? Not the troubleshooter, but they're the ones. They're like the. I want to say, and I don't. You tell me, Bill, if you agree with this, that sometimes the devil and everything, they're limited what they can do in our plane. So they need us humans or a human to carry out horrible things, horrible deeds.
Yes, absolutely. A host body that will.
Yeah, and think about it. Okay, would I rather possess a person and, like you said, maybe drive them crazy, or can I possess them and have them do these horrible acts for sometimes for years, which is like a ripple effect because they cause heartbreak, they cause anguish, agony for so many people. Let's say if they kill somebody or any of
No
the number of
question about it.
things. And it's like this is what I think evil, the devil, whatever you want to call it, Satan wants. It's like
Yeah, as much destruction as possible,
as
as
much
much
destruction as
misery and
possible.
pain and torment and
Yes.
suffering as humanly possible or
Yes.
spiritually possible.
Yes, including some of these things, and I was reading this book. You remember back in when Son of Sam out there in New York in the
I sure
1970s,
do.
and I don't know if you've
I
seen
have been there on that location several times in Untermeyer Park, and let me tell you, that's one of the most evil places
is
that I have ever been.
tell me, you know what? I don't know if you've heard of that book by Terry Morey that he wrote that he felt
Maury
that
Terry, yeah, I
Morey
have
Terry,
it.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
changed that he
yeah.
thought that it was basically it wasn't just Berkowitz it as a lone
No,
person.
and I agree with Maury. I agree
Yes.
100%. There's a network out there, and they are in the
Yes.
high places, and they
Yes.
know who they are, and they know what
Right.
they're doing.
Yes.
And this goes all the way up to some of the highest places on the earth
Yes.
that these people are part of.
Right.
And
If you read
yeah,
that book, he talks about
yeah,
basically the
the
people who are
ultimate
pulling the
evil.
strings are and they had tie-ins to the Process Church out in California
Yeah,
and
that's right. They're tied in with those, and you better believe it.
yeah, and they basically were flying people in from the coast to basically to commit these murders. And one of the things that I think was really interesting that in one of the interviews or that besides the actual murders, they said that the effect, the terror that it caused every time the newspaper was publishing all these stories,
Sure.
that was in a way like a sacrifice because they had so many people in that city terrorized.
Tied trauma.
That
That is,
trauma,
it's
that,
yeah. I mean, you're adding high levels of trauma into
yes,
something, and it's just horrible. It is. It's a horrible
right,
situation, and yes, I with the late Maury Terry on what he
yes,
wrote about in The Ultimate Evil, no
right.
doubt.
And people think, well, you know what, that was just a side effect, of course, the newspaper. But they said, and according to what he said, basically, that was one of the effects of, that they would shoot people here, shoot people there, that they were sending letters, to the newspapers to heighten it
Yeah,
up because they knew the newspapers, of course, would then blast it. And that basically that terror that all these masses were feeling was part of their how can I say their idea, their evil plan. How's that? I know it sounds a little bit like
yeah. Part of their terror, and really, if you want to talk about terrorism, that would be under domestic
yes,
terrorism.
yes,
That it was creating a level of terror
mm-hmm,
against the people of really not only New York but in other places
right,
as well, like Minot, North Dakota, and any other
yes,
places where the process was manifesting
yes,
and
yes,
operating out of. And that the process originally originated out of England,
right, out of the
and
UK, yeah,
yeah, and so Manson was
mm-hmm,
connected to them. Again, the Berkowitz and the Son of Sam people and
yeah,
others as well. This
sure,
was and probably to this day, probably is still a very large organization
yes,
that is certainly operating in the shadows
Mm-hmm.
and doing a variety of evils.
Well,
How many people? Is it like 2,000 people a day go missing in America?
lots of them.
Where are these people going? Where are some of these people going?
Well, and this is that's the thing. Unless you have somebody, a friend, a family, somebody to number one, put in a missing persons report or put in a welfare check. Uh, it's like I've heard of people being discovered dead in their apartments like weeks later, and it's like this is very
Yeah,
sad. You mean you had
very sad.
nobody to at least call the police and say, you know what, I haven't heard from this person. Please go check on them. Um,
Very, very sad, Marlene. It's heartbreaking
yes, it
to know
is.
that somebody perished like that and then just undiscovered for days or weeks or even
Yes.
months.
Yes. And then what you were saying originally, what happens, Bill, is same thing. Somebody disappears. If you don't have anybody, a friend or a family, to first of all put a missing persons report or start, giving the grief to the police. Hey, where's this person? You need to look for this person. That's it. It fades into the background. And if they ever find any remains, and that's a big if there's nothing there to tie them in, now with DNA, I don't know if you've seen, they have
Yeah,
found a lot of these cold cases are being closed or they're being basically unidentified victims are being ID'd. And even then, sometimes they have no idea who did it. All right.
yeah, no, it's true.
But yes, there's a lot of predators out there. And whether you want to say, I want to say that a good large portion of them, if not all of them, are under the influence of evil.
No question about it.
Yes.
And it continues to grow, and that's why it's so very important. I didn't come on your show to preach a sermon, but
Go
I
ahead.
came to
That's
speak truth,
yes.
and I always pray that God speaks through me to speak truth. And the truth of the matter is, in today's world, more so now than ever before in my lifetime, it is so important for people to draw close to God and to make him first. And this is not some kind of televangelism, phony baloney. This is truth. I'm speaking. I'm telling you, I've been there. I've been to the lowest lows, and I've had my life saved and spared by God and transformed as well. And went from having a life that I was wishing for death for many years to now having a life that is so blessed that I wouldn't trade my life with anybody's life on this planet. I praise God for that. So if we could just be real with God and be real with ourselves and keep him first, then our lives won't become perfect, but they will become much more blessed, and we'll be able to navigate through the daily minefields that are thrown at us.
Yes.
And all this madness is a little more manageable because of our real and authentic connection and relationship with God and our strong faith.
Well, the way I see it, Bill, is, whether you want to say you're a deeply religious person or spiritual, whatever, if it really didn't matter or wasn't anything, why is it being so attacked?
Yeah,
Okay. I have never,
yeah,
ever seen so much repression of religious observance, spiritualism, anything. It's
right.
like, this is incredible. I've never seen this in my life. What is this?
They are doing their best to try and eradicate faith and
Yes.
faith-based people
Yes.
and faith-based ideals. And so you hit the nail on the head. If there's nothing to this, then why would they go to such an effort to try and distance and
Yeah.
sort of create a distortion between God and man,
Right.
and trying to separate man to where people can't find God? They're spoon-fed just awful, horrible things on a daily basis, and it just is designed to lower the frequency and vibration to the point to where people are completely desensitized.
Yes, it is. It is.
And so when they become desensitized, you can throw anything at anybody, and they go, oh, yeah, I've seen that before, no big deal.
Yeah. Yes.
So now we're to the point to where, how can I say this? And I love all people. I'm not against anybody. I hate what some people do, to be
Sure.
honest with you.
Of course.
And there are some things taking place right now in our country
Yes.
that are on a slippery slope
Oh, yes.
to the point of there's going to be either there's, and I don't want this or wish this, but it's going to get to the point to where there's either going to be some type of civil disturbance,
Yes.
or somebody's going to do something, or God himself is just going to have enough of this. When you start to see these gatherings
Mm-hmm.
with children
Yes.
and putting them on stage and having
Oh,
them sexualized and
that
having them in places.
you know what? This is the one thing that I say. And some of these parents that I see that take these children there is like, you want to slap them. It's like, hello, why are you bringing your child to this? Isn't there anything in you as a parent? No protection that you're like,
Oh,
whatever your uh, beliefs are, is there's nothing in you that you want to protect your child and say, you know what, when you're an adult, you can make your decisions, but for now, I'm going to do what a parent is supposed to do, which is
right,
protect
you're a
you.
guardian, you're a protector,
Yes,
you're the person that's in charge of shaping the
yes,
child's mind and
yes,
ideals. And I've never in my life, I'm 56 years old, I have never in my lifetime seen such a blatant disregard for
yes,
children,
yes,
um, on the part of parents and the system as well. And this is part of an agenda to
right.
desensitize again. And so it's a very, very dangerous thing. It
But you,
boils my blood, to be honest
oh
with
no,
you,
no,
when I
but
see
see,
these types of things taking place.
this is the thing, Bill. You could have a whatever, a show, whatever. I don't care. If nobody shows up, if the parents are like, I'm not bringing, that's it. Nobody's bringing their child. Forget it. It's just nobody's gonna put together an event if nobody shows up. The problem here are the parents. Okay.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I mean, what are you thinking?
Yes,
What can you
of
be
course.
thinking?
Even if
Uh,
whatever your and and a lot of people, and I want to go, even if you're, let's say you're an atheist, I don't care, you're an atheist, but even atheists have a sense of protection for their young, for their children, okay, where
right.
you recognize, I'm not going to damage my child, okay, by exposing
My
them to
goodness, who would
something.
do such a thing?
Right, this is like, you know what, when you grow up, that's fine, but right now you're a child, and this is what people don't understand. The kind of childhood you have, fond memories, that you're protected from being exposed to this. When you grow up to be an adult and you encounter difficulties, when you have a childhood that was a childhood, how's that? This is what basically carries you along because, life is better than maybe if you're going through something dark. You
Yeah.
have memories to say, I know that life is better than what I'm experiencing right now, and so I know I can get through this. But if from the moment that you're a child, that especially the betrayal is from
Oh,
someone who is supposed to protect you, and
oh
that
my
person
goodness.
betrays
Yeah.
you, um, let me tell you, that right there sets that the trauma going forward for those children as they become adults is profound,
Yeah.
profound,
And
and
it's
it can't be
irreparable in a
undone
lot of
if it,
cases.
unless it's, and that's what I'm saying. It's like, yeah, all these events, the ones I would take it up with would be the parents or the adult, the caregivers, whoever it is
Yeah.
that's bringing these children there. And it's true. You would have said this to me, let me think, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And I
Oh,
said, no
yeah.
way.
Yeah.
What? You're gonna get like go straight to jail. It's like, you know,
Yeah. But
it's,
nowadays, it is
yes,
the spirit of rebellion that is on the world. And so, with that spirit of rebellion comes a spirit of lawlessness, and that's
yes,
exactly what's happening.
yes,
You now have places like states like Illinois that
yeah,
pretty much you could do whatever, and no bail, or you don't have to pay any bail or anything like
yes.
that, and just uh,
I've
you
never
just
seen that.
can't
I have never
comprehend it.
seen
Yeah,
that.
it's mind-boggling. How in the world? So now you're giving an open invitation
Yes,
for criminals to
yes.
commit every criminal act under the sun, and it's okay because you're going to get right back out.
The other day, I don't know if you saw this video. This came out like maybe 10 days ago. It's a guy in McDonald's in New York City. And he has an altercation. Apparently, it was an altercation. He pulls out this one of those hand axes
Yeah,
and he
I
starts
saw it.
destroying this thing. Come to find out, the next day they let this guy out. I,
Yeah,
I mean, he didn't kill anybody or hurt anybody, but he kind of was close, and you could
he
tell.
certainly could have.
And I'm thinking to myself,
Yeah,
Okay, if you don't want to prosecute him criminally, which I don't understand why, because basically he trashed the place, doesn't
Yeah.
anybody think of Baker acting him and having him examined? Because that is not normal behavior.
These, so we're in the times, I say it's Sodom come again because
Yes,
it's absolute anything goes. And the victims are treated like the perpetrators, and the perpetrators are treated like victims.
yes,
And I say this:
yes,
when someone does such a wicked and heinous act against someone, especially a child,
yes.
in my opinion, they
Mm-hmm.
don't have any more rights. They have violated
Yes,
their rights because they have taken the rights from the innocent victim.
yes.
So therefore, they don't have any more rights.
Let me tell you something. Bill, haven't you heard that for criminals, men or women who have committed crimes against children, when they go to jail, even among other criminals, they are the
Right.
target. Why? Because even amongst criminals, even amongst murderers, how's that?
Yeah.
A person, man or woman, who's victimized a child is like, all
Yep.
bets are off. What does that tell
Yeah.
you? What does that tell you?
That tells you how wicked and heinous those acts are, even to criminals,
Yeah.
even to some hardened criminals.
Yes.
It's very wicked and heinous. So, and
Yeah.
Marlene, I'm unfortunately going to have to
Yes.
wrap this
Don't
up
worry
in a
about
minute
that,
because
Bill.
I'm to my destination now, and I can't thank you enough for having me
No, on
back
the
on. I want to come
contrary.
back on again as soon as you
Yes,
can have me
yes.
back because I want to discuss the new book.
Yes, and I do, and I want to talk to you about some of the stories, stuff that you're permitted to say. But
Oh
again,
yeah, there's plenty. Yeah.
good luck on all your projects, and we'll talk soon. And please be careful, okay? Be careful out
Thank
there.
you so much, and God bless you and your family, and thank everybody out there for listening in. And I'm sorry for having to leave a little
Not a
earlier.
problem.
And
It's
God bless
understood.
all of you.
You're doing God's work,
And I look
so
forward to coming back on again.
take care. Bye bye, Bill.
Bye bye.
Okay, there we go. And he had told me, believe it or not, and he was so sweet to apologize because we've had to reschedule a couple of times because he's just been so busy. And at this time, he said, I will talk to you on the phone. That's why I don't have him on video on my way to a case. And we were discussing even before we started rolling. He's always been busy. He's always been busy. But now he's like extra busy. All right, because he does uh, what like what he did with the deliverance with that gentleman that was in another continent on Skype, but he also does local stuff. Obviously, I guess this was within driving distance of where he's at. Um, and he was telling me briefly that that in the last what 2.5 years he's had an uptick in the cases, the severity of the cases. We were discussing, how much of this is it the stress? Is it the it's a weird dynamic for some people. I mean, some people handle stress. Let's say now that this thing with COVID is kind of like in the rear view, kind of. Even though I think that there's other things that will, but let's say now with the economy. All right, the economy always dips up, goes and down, but there's a lot of things that have been going on for a long time. Uncertainty about jobs, uncertainty about money, uncertainty about housing. I'll give you a perfect example. I live in Florida. I've lived in Florida all my life, and we've had a lot of people here, and real estate is exorbitant, exorbitant, especially in South Florida. If you go south of West Palm Beach, it's like untouchable. All right, but even in northern Florida, and I live in a very rural area of northern Florida, I hadn't looked at it. I hadn't looked at the at rentals or anything like that and few weeks ago, somebody asked me, and I was surprised. First of all, the scarcity of properties, and if you could find one, yes, it's less than if you move to the southern part of Florida, but still, it was like astronomical. And I was looking like, how can people afford to live? My point being the stressor, unless a bunch of people pile in and live together, all right? And how can I say it? Once upon a time, I want to say like in a galaxy far, far away, uh, when you were young, you would get a job, let's say at a fast food, or maybe when you were going to college, or even whether you got a job and then you would start to work and maybe you got married or whatever. But you always had, whether you got married and you both decided to buy a house, or whether you were single, you basically, once you got your groove on with a job and you were getting some decent little money going on, you had hopes. If not a house, you could buy a condo, you could buy a townhouse. Um, it was accessible. It was accessible. You just had to work and, get your money together and, get your credit together, and chances are you could buy something. And this is the way it's always been. A single person or a young family, they go into what they call starter homes, which is you buy a little house, maybe two bedrooms or no garage, or an older home, a fixer upper, and then the thought was always that this is how you start, and then you had hopes of, quote unquote, the American dream of, hey, I can have a place to live, whether you have it for your family or for yourself, or hey, I don't want to be, I don't want to be a renter all my life. I want to have a place where I'm going to, or let's go the other route. Let's say you're one of these persons that says, hey, you know what? I want to become an investor. I want to buy properties, and this is how I'm going to make my money. I'm going to go into real estate, and I'm going to start with, smaller properties. Again, properties fixer uppers, or let's say you're one of these people that's good with a hammer and a nail. Even lean-to shanties now are untouchable. Because remember, most banks, unless, depending, you need a 10 or a 20% down payment, the least. That's not throw in their closing costs and all the other fees that they throw in there to purchase a property, and it's become unreachable. And I think that's really sad. And you know why I'm saying this? Because of my age. I can say it because I lived the other side of this. All right. I come from a very, very, very middle class background. Okay. All my family, everybody lived and in a middle class neighborhood, worked middle class jobs. Um, yeah, I was born in Miami, but my family were immigrants from Cuba. And after a couple of years, they found, a little house in this suburb of Miami called Hialeah that was kind of empty, where you could buy a little house. This was back in the 60s, but again, it was, even if you were a factory worker or you had it didn't have to be a glitzy job, it didn't have to be, you still were able to buy a little house. And that's what my family did. They bought a small house in this, Hialeah was an older part. My aunt and my uncle moved across the street, and that's how you started. And people would, you know, start improving it. It was an older home. And that was always the deal that you had. It was, if you were willing to work, you had the opportunity. But now I see it, and it's like, wow, you could be busting your you know what. And this this desire, this need, this opportunity, if you have it. Let me tell you something. I'm not saying this is for everybody. Because I know a lot of people that, let's say, if, hey, I want to travel around first, I'm not gonna buy anything because I don't want to settle down. I want to move around to the other parts of the country. I'm jetting or whatever floats your boat. I get it. I get it. But overall, I want to say the majority of people that I knew, even whether their socioeconomic status was the here, always was, hey, if I want to buy a place or I want to invest in a place, I want to get into real estate and I'm going to buy some places, and then pretty soon I'm going to move on to the other one. I'll, t- I'll tell you what, I think it's been years. I remember there would always be those infomercials about, the buy properties and flip them and make money. That thing has been, some version of it has been around for years and years, about these courses, and, you go to the thing and we're going to have uh, they would have these events, and of course, basically, it was a way to give you a tremendous sales pitch. But basically, it was getting into investing into real estate and flipping and buying for nothing. I'm sure everybody's, well, you don't hear those infomercials anymore. They don't exist. You never hear them. Why? Because it's impossible. Even though technically you'd think, yes, investing in real estate is a good investment. All right, because it was always the um, there was always the whether it was the foreclosures or again the fixer uppers that were really needed a lot of fixer upper, but the potential was there. I mean, there was land, and a lot of that has gone to the back seat. Why? Because people are barely holding on just to keep a roof over their head. Because especially now, after the thing with COVID, and then now the inflation and gasoline. Let's not even go there. Okay, that's not even. It's prohibitive. And this, everybody feels it because if you have a vehicle and you need that vehicle and you need to go to drive to go to work, all right, because let's face it, not everybody has the luxury or the option of, let's say, doing remote work. It's just, the type of work you do, all right, that's not it. Oh, what if you work in a hotel and you're one of the people that cleans up the rooms? You got to be there. There's not every job is in front of a computer, all right? You got to be there, and you need to be able. I'm going to give you a perfect example where I live. It's rural, and everything is a distance. All right. My closest supermarket, right, real supermarket, is about 12 or 13 miles away from me. In other words, around here, if you need to go to work, any job, you got to travel a bit. You got to put gasoline in a vehicle. All right. So think about it. How much really are you bringing home after you back out? How much money you have to put into the gasoline tank just to keep that job, just to show up, is my point. So again, getting back to the original thing, all these stressors. Okay, I mean, we've always had stressors, they come and they go, but the antidote to stress, uh, or systemic stress, like that long drawn out stress, is hope. Okay, when you have hope in the middle of a stressful situation or months or episodes or whatever you want to call it, whether it's collective, like in a city, a country, or individually or a family, when you have hope that, that proverbial light at the end of the tunnel, it's like, okay, I will get through this. I've got a way to get out to the other end. It's temporary. All right. And I think that a lot of times, looking, because you might think, well, we're talking strictly here economics. Okay, but all these factors, okay, affect I mean, you can rationalize everything that I've just said, but that doesn't mean you can turn it off from invading your mind, your spirit, depression. There's a host of things. All those things open the gateway for negative spiritual turbulence. All right. Especially, I want to say, where uh, there's been, I want to say, an attack, either spiritualism or religion. And by this, I'm not saying any religion, even though the Christians, we're taking us, man, we're getting it. We're getting spanked hard. All right. But before and you know what? Sometimes maybe I'm being naive or idealistic. But once upon a time, which is like, this was America, it was whatever your religion, that was what America was. Whatever your religion or lack thereof, hey, you wanted to be an atheist? Go for it. That's on you. You want to be a new ager and and consult the stones or the gems or whatever? Go for it. Jewish, Christian, whatever it was in America, it was like that was protected and nothing was attacked. All right, to each his own, and you would worship in the best way you saw fit, unless of course you were, by the way, you were a cult, like where you're killing children or something like that. But let's face it, that's not the majority of stuff. And I've never, again, seen what I've been seeing, and it gives me pause because, like I said, when you've been alive as long as I have, like, the before and the after. When you're only alive X amount of time, you really don't know the before. When you're a little bit older, you have the luxury, if you want to look at it, of the before. You have something to compare it to, and that's why you're like, what is going on? And believe me, I am a very laid back, live and let live kind of person. I really, truly am. All right. I always try to keep that balance, which is always which is, even if I don't agree with what you're doing or thinking or saying or whatever, it's like, man, I never do. But there was always a part of me, and That you always thought it was society, which is okay. I wouldn't do it. That's not for me. But hey, if that's what you want to do, be my guest. Go ahead, do it. Yeah, I might not agree. I might even go, God, what is that? But it's almost like for me to have the freedom, I have to give you the freedom to do the same thing, do whatever it is. Again, unless you're hurting somebody, a child, or forcing somebody, then that changes the whole dynamic right there. And I've never seen that, I don't know, that freedom attacked that way. Um, to me, it's like I pointed out to Bill, if it was not such a big deal, they would just leave people alone. It's like, oh, they wanna go to church, or they wanna do this, or they wanna whatever. Why go through all the trouble if there was not something to it, as far as whether if you want to call it spiritual salvation, or let's say you're not the type of person that, but it does something for your mind that you feel whole or protected because you have a spiritual belief, a religion, whatever the case might be, that soothes you. It soothes your mind, it soothes your heart, it soothes your spirit. Okay, even if some person can say, well, I don't see anything happening, but to that person, that's how they take it in. The religious beliefs, their practices brings that to them. What does it matter, unless what you're trying to do is you're trying to drive everybody crazy? Then you want to take away anything that will soothe them. All right, and put them under a great deal of stress continuously for long periods of time. And I'm not talking little stress, I'm talking extinction level stressors for a long time. You want to see people go cuckoo, kuma cuckoo? Do that. All right, do that. And again, in the background is a dark malevolence that you can't quantify it. Nobody can bottle it, photograph it, prove it, put it in a lab and produce it, but it's there. All right. And somebody like Bill, who works in that area, is aware of it. Because sometimes, we always think sometimes, especially when you listen to somebody like Bill Bean, as far as it's a one-on-one thing. He's um, working with a person on a one-to-one basis. But sometimes that, I want to use the best word I know, think I can think of, that corruption is collective. Okay, it's a collective malevolence. It's not just that one person that has a spiritual attachment or demonic influence or whatever. That, in other words, the aim is why hurt only one when I can hurt the many. All right. Oh, and plus along the way, I'm going to take away anything and everything that could, one, protect them, soothe their heart, help them be hopeful, help them hold on. But he was absolutely on target when he said desensitizing us. You know, I tell everybody, again, I'm gonna use my years on this earth. I remember when The Exorcist came out in 1973, that people were running around trying to get exorcised by their priests, and all these parishes all over the United States, I think around the world, were basically people were lining up. People hadn't been to church, were cafeteria Catholics and other Christian. Everybody was running around, and you know why? Because yes, it was a well-made movie, I understand, but up to that point, even though there had been those Hammer movies and all that, the audiences we were innocent. We were innocent. We were, I want to say, not exposed, whether it was a graphic or the idea, that it really shocked us. It just shocked people to the innocence was lost. I mean, so many movies have been made afterwards have been more graphic, but back then it's so memorable because the audience, the normal audience, the run of the mill, the collective normal, not the outliers. Okay, we were so shocked because even though we'd seen movies of whether it was you know weird stuff, Christopher Lee as the vampire with bloodshot eyes, other dark, Rosemary's Baby, I think, had already come out. and everything, it did something, I think, to the collective innocence of the audiences that were like, that's horrible. Think about it. If you look at Rosemary's Baby, okay, because if you look at both of those movies, basically the one that has the upper hand there is Satan, the devil, whatever, malevolence. Okay, in the first one, the premise of the movie is basically the Rosemary's husband basically sells her or offers her as a vessel for the devil to bring his child into the world because he wants to make it big. He's the, which by the way I don't understand how that works because but basically that's what he does. He's the one that allows this to happen. He makes a deal, but not for himself, and he gives his wife up to be raped by uh by the devil and bring forth his child. Okay? And here she, of course, she's surrounded by all these in that building where she lived at, all these witches and warlocks or whatever you want to call them, or devil worshippers. I don't care. You know, a rose by any other name. So even the doctor, everybody that surrounded her, of course, was instrumental in guarding her for that purpose and the pregnancy for that purpose. Okay, but bottom line, at the end of that movie, who triumphed? It was the devil. It was Satan or Lucifer, whatever you want to call him. When you when the Exorcist came out, well, you could say at the end of the movie, Father Damien exorcised Reagan and she was set free, but basically not really because this thing basically he had to sacrifice himself and he got possessed. So in a way, it wasn't that the priest was able to send the demons or the devil or whoever was in there back to hell or wherever. It was the only way I can win or save this child is by putting myself, which, by the way, is not the way a real exorcism works. All right. And then what was the other movie that came out in those times? The Omen. That was another one. Same thing. All right. Same thing. Here, the devil, you know, uh, manipulates to have their child born of, I think it was a jackal, placed in with is a changeling with the powerful Thorn family, kills the child that was born. And if you follow, the because there was more than one Omen movie. He's the Antichrist, and basically he triumphs. People are after him. People that know what he is, eventually even his own father, Gregory Peck. And still, in other words, the hand of the devil was mightier than any than the power of God. How's that? All right. And basically, there that drives a subconscious belief system into that audience because remember, all those movies were very, very popular and seen by millions of people. All right. And basically, it's like, how we would always see before that there was the prototypical hero in Hollywood, that was the message of what this is, how the hero would act. There was a certain archetype. Well, basically, these movies were laying out that at the end of the day, evil triumphs. You could have God on your side, you can invoke angels, you could be even a religious person. Because remember, in the Omen, all right, there's even priests, there's monks, I forget what they were, that knew who he was or what he was, and were trying to kill him even as a child. And still, there was one that famous movie, the famous part where what was it, David Warner, or was it Richard? I can't remember. David. As a matter of fact, he recently passed away. His head gets. So basically, what I'm saying is there's an inference, there's a messaging beyond the entertainment value that you're saying. Wow, that's out there. There's no getting away from it. No matter if you're a priest, no matter how religious you are, no matter if you ask for help, uh, you can still be victimized because if you remember, even in the Omen, The Thorne family, the couple which is played by Gregory Peck and Lee Grant, they were rich, but they were nice people. They weren't bad people. And all they wanted was to have a child. Apparently, that had a problem with having children, but they weren't bad people. In other words, being a good person didn't protect you. And I think that that really did something to people's mental, especially back in the 70s when these movies came out, because prior to that, we were always shown through the media and movies, which is very powerful, a very, very, very powerful vehicle, that good is always going to triumph over evil. All right. At the end of the day, let's face it, all the Hammer films, I'm going to go back to the Hammer films. But even before that, you know, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing rushes in and puts a stake through his heart. I don't care about the bloodshot. It doesn't matter. Always at the end of these movies, even earlier ones, if you want to say, well, they have the happy ending, but always the message was good triumphs over evil. The good person triumphs over evil. Even if they have to sacrifice themselves, they know that their sacrifice means the triumph over evil, the bad guy, the bad company, the bad government, whoever the villain was in the movie. But in let's say for these purposes, we're talking here about evil as in the devil, Satan, Lucifer, whatever, whatever. Okay, whether you want to say it's a monster movie or anything like that, the end was always that. And then these movies started to change that the paradigm. And by the way, even after that, all right, um, it's never gone quite back. It's never gone quite back. And um, less people, and by the way, I don't say this lightly, a lot of people that think that when they see these movies, it's all as far as the darkness, the corruption of the human soul, what people are driven to. Again, I'm not kidding you. People think that, oh, if let's say you go there, if you believe in evil or the devil or Lucifer or whatever you want to call it, and you're thinking of this prototypical Hollywood version of the possession and the person talks and spits and levitates. Yeah, you could say that, but you want me to tell you something? That's window dressing. The real true aim of evil is to corrupt a human being so that that person does horrible things and corrupts other humans or causes anguish and heartbreak. All right? The devil gets more mileage out of a person like that than making somebody, spit green pea soup. Yeah, and if they don't call an exorcist to come get you, what's going to happen is you're going to end up in an insane asylum. Yeah, sure, the devil get really no. What he wants is a human instrument that he can have commit horrible acts on his behalf. All right, and sometimes it's a one-time deal, and sometimes, and I'm sure you heard of killers, serial killers, other ones. They go for years, and some of them don't ever get caught. All right, that right there is the evil that we need to fear. Okay, as far as not the Hollywood version of somebody talking like what they say. And I'm by this I'm not saying, how they say that they have all these giveaways, you know telltale giveaways where a person is possessed, where they have superhuman strength, or they talk in different languages, like or Latin or languages that they have no way of knowing, and or they know things about the person that's trying to exorcise them. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, all right? But really, truly, an evil entity, what they would want is to have that person operate as much as possible for as long as possible, doing horrific things and not getting caught, not being stopped, not coming to the attention, whether it's law and order, justice system, an exorcist, and things of that nature. I mean, I'm going to do a show about that because I think sometimes people get all caught up thinking that it's just the big the in your face, the when you see these people that they do these gymnastics because they're being possessed, and it's like, oh, come on. Yeah, okay, it's kind of in your face, but there's something much darker, much scarier, more permanent that comes about when you've got that type of attachment, whether it's an obsession and or possession. Yes, absolutely. So anyway, guys, I hope you liked this interview with Bill Bean. I've got a lot of great uh, guests lined up. Okay, that are coming on. Again, I am going to have a live stream for um, for Halloween. I'm gonna get together some ghost stories, you name it. We'll see what happens. I don't know yet who my wingman's gonna be. Probably my hubby, but we'll see. We'll see. Let's see if I can dig up somebody else. I've got somebody in the back that I'm working on. You know, um, and yeah, and look me up on Eerie News, look me up on Substack, go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, go to mppellicer.com. Again, that's where I have the links to everything, all the shows, all the videos. If you want to listen to them without commercial interruption, you can download them or listen to them on the browser from my website or links to your podcast platform, whatever your preference is. And let's see, because we're heading towards 2023 like a bullet. And I hate to say it, but you know what? You know how everybody always thinks, especially after a rough year, like, oh my God, I hope this new year is going to be better. Let me tell you something. I've never meant that as much as I do now. I think we are really, really ready for, like, let's have a good year. We need to put some of this stuff behind us because people need to heal. People need to heal and move on. And life is not perfect, and that's just the way it is. But man, we need some time to heal and get ourselves together. And along the way, listen to weird stories that Marlene brings to you. So until then, thank you so much. You're all wonderful to come and spend this time with me. Take care.